Chapter 5, A Name to Call It By. Spit on your hands and take a fresh holt. Early saying. Sayward was put out. Whoever heard of such a thing as being ashamed of the name of your own hometown? But that's how some folks felt about Moonshine Church. The first time she heard it was when Porteous told her a fight was on between their town and Tateville for the county seat. Then Zephyr Brown stopped her on Water Street, sober as an owl. He told her the courthouse would likely go to Tateville and Moonshine Church to the dogs. She better sell off her land for what she could get while she had buyers for it. I wouldn't have thought he'd speak to me after what he tried to do to you, she told Porteous. Anyway, I didn't thank him none for it. To herself she guessed that Moonshine Church could get along by itself. It wasn't doing bad for an upstart town along the river. All day long you could hear the broken tune of the sash sawmills, like giant horse flies buzzing and lighting, stopping and starting, whining and skipping, for the saws cut only on the downstroke. Griswold's race from Crazy Creek had to be dug wider. 5 mills took water from that race now. 3 of them sawmills. Even that wasn't enough to fill the bill for the town. 1,000 feet of boards was a good day's sawing, and that had to be cut out of soft poplar logs. Oak and hickory took longer. Truth to tell, the hardwoods were mostly broad-axed. If you went up in the hills, you could hear the chip and hewing all day. House and barn timbers were in great demand, and it didn't pay to use walnut or cherry any more, for they fetched a better price boated down the river. Oh, Sayward knew what Zephyr Brown was after. He wanted her to sell him some of her land cheap, but he could go suck his thumbs. She had no trouble finding buyers. Her trouble was holding on. Every month, townmen came and plagued her to sell. They offered good inducement. She had sold all Water Street in parcels and lots. Why wouldn't she sell this? But that piece of 3 acres downtown she let Oliver Meek have. Taught her a lesson. Oliver gave her $400. She thought that a pile of money. But after a while, he sold it to Seth Collins for $750. Seth didn't hold it long till Colonel Sutton gave him $1,000, and now the colonel had cut it up into 6 parcels, and was asking $300 a lot. Why, he was making more clear profit out of that one piece of her land in 6 months than she had got for it after holding on to it for nigh onto 30 years. Clearing it in the bargain, chopping down the butts and vines, burning out the stumps, grubbing the wild sprouts that for years tried to come up, and working the ground till it was fit and fine. If anybody makes money out of our land after this, it's going to be the Wheelers, she told Porteous. And who had a better right, she'd like to know, who came here when all this ground was nothing save a howling wilderness. But it wasn't them that came first, like her father, who made anything out of it, she noticed. There was Billy Harbison, one of the earliest. He was beat out of his first place by Zephyr Brown, and induced to sell pieces off his second till now, when movers in red-wheeled wagons were coming in ready to pay good money for bottom land. Billy had none left, Their old neighbor, Miss Covenhoven, had sold out long ago when Big John died, and now strangers were selling high-priced town lots off that farm. Till it was done, it would fetch a small fortune, but Martha Covenhoven wouldn't get it. No, it wasn't the old settlers that reaped the harvest, save for those stubborn few who held on to their land till the cows came home. Now Porteous was all for Sayward selling out. It would make more land available for the town to build on, he claimed, and the more folks Moonshine Church had, the more argument to be the county seat. Lazy me, Sayward said, if Tateville's entitled to the courthouse, let them have it. It didn't bother her any. Everybody knew Tateville was bigger than Moonshine Church. It was richer too, they said, with ditches dug on both sides of its main street, and sidewalks laid in brick or stone, and no team had dared to drive over them. Besides, Tateville had a wool mill, with she didn't know how many looms, and when men and boys came out from work, their faces and hands were red as blood from the new dyed wool. They looked like Indians, Molly Weaver told her. So let them have their county seat, she said, but do you think folks like the Meeks and Suttums would hear to it? No, they fought Tateville tooth and nail. To hear them talk, you'd half believe the world would go flat as a pancake if the courthouse went to Tateville. Even General Morrison worked like a horse, trying to get the county seat in Moonshine Church. The shorter time men lived here, it looked like, the harder they fought against losing something they'd ever had. The way they were riled up and talked, you'd reckon a county seat was like heaven with golden streets, with pumps that fetched up whiskey instead of water, and where folks were always washed so all fired clean and white of their sins, that a person from another settlement couldn't stand looking at them till he smoked up a piece of glass, like Jake Tench had the time he claimed the sun spotted like a rattlesnake. The new Moonshine Church Weekly Sentinel blackguarded Tateville, and the Western Repository Gazette of Tateville ran down Moonshine Church. That was all right, but it went too far when it poked fun at the other town's name. Whoever heard of a seat of justice with a name like Moonshine Church, the Tateville paper printed? Our very prisoners at the bar would snicker. Shawnee County would be a laughing-stock to the nation, the name of its seat an offense to all of Christendom. That's when folks in Moonshine Church started getting up a petition to change the name. Sayward told them they had a right to their opinion, but so had she, and she wouldn't sign it. For one thing, it had been Porteous who named it Moonshine Church, and for another, it always seemed like a decent commonplace name to her. Why, it sounded right and natural as her own name. She didn't see in her mind a church made out of moonshine when she said it any more than she saw a boy hopping out of the grass when she said, "Johnny jump up." She always reckoned Johnny jump up a pert flower name, and Moonshine Church a pert name for a town. But now these later comers wanted to give it some stale, old, second-hand name. Make it Syracuse, they said. Make it Portland. Make it Concord, Albany, London, or Berlin. One woman even said, make it Jerusalem. That woman was in the kitchen tonight. So were some other women and men. They were waiting for the corporation meeting to be over. Porteous called it the corporation because not every crossroads settlement had a bill of incorporation by the state legislature, but to most folks it was just the select council of trustees elected by the freeholders, with the president, the mayor. As a rule, they met at the academy or the back room of one of the taverns, for they had no town hall as yet. Tonight this was supposed to be a secret meeting to decide about the name, and they came over here to the house of their lawyer. But secrets traveled fast in Moonshine Church, and now 7 others sat in the kitchen, waiting to hear or to have their say when the meeting broke up. It lasted a long time. You could hear the sounds of wrangling back and forward over there like the wind in the old days, coming through the deep woods. After a while, a door sounded, and Sayward heard a rap on the door to the sweep. Those waiting in the kitchen braced up, expecting to see somebody come out with news, but that was only Porteous, telling her what they had made out beforehand. Now she put the coffee on to boil, and ham to fry, and set the table with her new white crockery plates, and heavy white cups, and fine wooden-handled knives, and forks, and pewter spoons. In time a rumble sounded like putting through a motion, then a racket of chairs being pushed back over a plank floor, and a stumping of boots. As they came out, those men of the corporation looked surprised to see so many crowded in the kitchen. Most had to go back for chairs and benches from the other room. "Any of you ladies object to tobacco?" Major Hawking asked, with a cigar in his hand. He lived in the 2-story house at High and Race Streets, and never had he been in war except to sell goods to the army commissary. But everybody called him Major. "I do," the flytrap said. She was the one who wanted Moonshine Church called Jerusalem, a thorny maiden lady who kept 2 boards hanging up in her house, smeared with molasses. Whenever they got full of flies, she would smack them together. "In that case, I'll put it out," the major said courteously. He threw a cigar in the fire, but back in the chimney corner old lady Winters sat and puffed all the harder on her corncob pipe, her eyes black with disdain. "It smells mighty good in here," Miss Wheeler once said. "It ought to. It smells like my coffee." This from Oliver Meek, the storekeeper. "I bought the coffee at George Roebuck's," Sayward said mildly, and the men laughed, set up by the sight of their plates filled with ham, and their cups with the steaming black coffee. "I have a petition to read to you, gentlemen," the flytrap announced, standing up and unrolling a long paper. "I call it Resolve to Change the Name of Moonshine Church to Jerusalem." The councilmen drew long faces. Oh, they didn't say they wouldn't listen. They just didn't save any racket. Their chairs scraped and bumped as they sat down. Now and then, for a minute, they'd put on pious faces as if to hear. Then they'd take fresh bites or smack their lips over coffee. Cups, knives, and forks clattered by mistake and on purpose. Trustees turned to their neighbors to ask them to pass this or that, or could they have another cup of coffee. Hardly one looked at the flytrap. It took a long time for her to read all her resolves. The minute she was done, talk broke out, in the open, like the academy after school, but not about the paper. Oliver Meek plagued John Quitman how a teamster hauled 16 barrels of whiskey from Cincinnati in 10 hours. What did he think of that? Quitmen who owned keel boats and barges answered it didn't scare him. He said the teamster was lucky he didn't break his horse's legs, for the state corduroy road was worse than no road at all, being mostly mud holes that let horses down to their bellies, and full of floating logs besides. So it went. They talked of the census, and each had his own reckoning for the town and the county. They told what banks had gone bad lately, and how much such and such buildings cost. Sayward couldn't help thinking. Helped by her girls, she waited on the table and other company, seeing that each had enough to eat, but she couldn't help remembering how it used to be in the old days. Most of the men then had to come a mighty long ways through the woods, on foot, and with night dogs snapping after. It wasn't often they didn't fetch their families along. Their women and young ones wouldn't have missed it for the world. Oh, at first, those old-time settlers would talk what was afoot in the woods, about some house raising or taxing, but the main part of the evening was sociable, for fun and frolic. They told stories that made you wipe your eyes one minute and scream and holler the next. Your insides warmed and your hearts stretched. Till it was over you felt like a brother and sister to all, if you didn't beforehand. You hated to see the night go so fast, and when the hour for parting came, you never knew if you would see each other again. You stood at the door and watched them off through the snow or leaves, a-whirling their flambeaux to keep them lit, a-calling back something they forgot. Or maybe their third and fourth farewells. Goodbye, they'd call. Goodbye, you'd call back. Goodbye, goodbye. Fainter and fainter they sounded, till all you could make out was their light like pale spook fire in the dark woods. And when you turned back in the house, it looked lonesome and desperate without them. She could feel that choked feeling for your friends and folks come over her now, even when you lay abed with your head on your bolster. Your heart still tramped along with them through the dark woods till they got home. Now these men tonight at Moonshine Church were different. Town bodies, reckoning town things, figures of money and time and such, entered in their talk. Hardly one spoke that he didn't mention so many dollars or hours and days it took to do something, or so many boats tied up last week at one time, and how many tons they carried. They were good enough folks, and friendly to her and Porteous, if not to the fly trap, but they weren't the settler folks she and Porteous used to know in the woods in the old days. She recollected now how Granny McWhirter used to complain of how folks changed since the Revolution. Before the war, Granny used to say it had no classes. A poor man was good as a rich man, and welcome at his house or table. Sayward never hardly could make Granny out. She reckoned Granny was just getting old. The old always complained of the young. No, she hadn't seen what Granny meant then, but she was beginning to now. When rations were over, the council went home, saying nothing of what it had done. Most of the company went too. Only Jenny stayed, not to help Sayward and the girls with the dishes, but believing Porteous would tell something of what had gone on. And so he did, but not to Jenny. He would give one of his young ones the honor first. "Well, Massy," he said, I understand you're not living in Moonshine Church anymore. Did you know that? Quickly, the young ones crowded around. So they changed the name after all, Sayward thought, but they wouldn't give the fly trap the satisfaction of knowing that they did in part what she resolved. No, they would sooner have the fly trap on the other side, to go against her. What's the name now? Jenny, sharp as scissors, wanted to know. Porteous bent over the fire, lighting a tapper for his pipe, so a coal wouldn't blacken his fingers. Then he puffed cheerfully, his eyes green and bright. Americus, Ohio, how does that strike you? Jenny's face hardened. Well, I intend to go on calling it Moonshine Church, so I expect will a lot of other folks. She nodded her head, took her wrap from the peg, and went home. As soon as she had left, Sayward's children gave their opinion. Huldah was still out someplace. Kinsey was back east, and Resolve at the Morrisons, but the rest told what they thought. All through it, Porteous sat dragging on his pipe, his eyes dancing, the puffs coming from his lips, but not a word till they were done. That was the way Sayward reckoned he must sit in court down at Maytown, letting the other lawyers bandy their words, in no hurry to deliver his say-so, till his turn came. Now when the children had their say, he pulled from his pocket a long paper written on both sides. I was given an original poem to read to the council tonight. Unfortunately, the effort was in vain, but I understand it's to be printed this week in the Sentinel. You may want to hear it, and guess who wrote it. He cleared his throat. There is a prayer of wide renown, which I dislike to hear, to change the name of this fair town we citizens hold dear. They pray for some conventional name. The muses answer, no, such names belong to alien fame, and not to Ohio. Our cherished name is strong and plain, 'tis clear and easy spoken, descending to us by a chain that never should be broken. No poet that the world has heard, no scholar in research, can offer a more moral word than that of Moonshine Church. Oh, let us hand it down the stream of time to coming ages, so Moonshine Church may be the theme of future bards and sages. Our kinsfolk slumber here, are blessed, their wish we shan't besmirch. Let them still rest upon the breast of peaceful Moonshine Church. So my defense remains the same, no further need to search. Dismiss the plaintiffs, not the name of guiltless Moonshine Church. All the time he was reading it, Sayward watched little Chauncey. Most times he was in bed at this hour, but tonight was a special occasion, and she had let him come down with Massey in their bed gowns, to have a chance at the news and the leftovers. As a rule, the little feller sat wrapped in his own thinking, but tonight he hung on every word, as he mostly did for rhyming pieces. Now when Porteous finished, everyone but Chauncey guessed who was the poet. Most of them reckoned it a woman, some said the fly trap, but none Porteous said was right. Then he asked Chauncey. I couldn't tell that it was a woman, he said. Why not? His father asked. Because when you read it, I could see a man all the time. What made you see a man? His father persisted. It was a word in it. I don't know what it was any more, but I knew he wouldn't say it if he was a woman. Who was the man you saw? Libby asked him. I didn't see him with my eyes. I just saw him in my mind. It might have been a big man, or a little man. I don't know, but I think maybe it was Papa. They all hollered at that, and demanded of Porteous if it was true, and when he laughed and admitted it, They said Chauncey had been over in the law office so much he saw him write it. No, I didn't see him, just in my mind, Chauncey insisted. I didn't think you wrote the poem, Papa, Deesia said, because Americus sounds like Latin, and I thought maybe you were the one who wanted Americus. Well, as a matter of fact, I did propose the name, Americus too, Porteous conceded. Sayward had sat silent, listening. Now she smiled to herself. Wasn't that just like Porteous, being on both sides? First he wrote a poem against changing the name. Then he told the council what new name to change it to. He wasn't satisfied to be the one who named Moonshine Church. He had to name Americus too. Oh, she could see he had his tongue in his cheek when he wrote that poem. That way he would be on both sides, and none could be against him. He would be a judge in Shawnee County yet. Now, you all go to bed right away, she told them. Late that night she awoke and lay sleepless for a while. She turned the new name over in her mind. Americus, was it? Now why did it mind her of the old days? She was like Chauncey. It minded her of something, and she didn't know what. Oh yes, she did too. It minded her when she was a girl, and a young married woman. Hardly anybody then, save Porteous, said America. No, they said Americi. They said Pennsylvania too, and Virginie. Americus was something like that. That old name, Americi, had a power of strength and feeling in it, and Americus was much like it, having only a trammel tacked on the end. Chapter 6 County Seat. Let justice be done, though the heavens fall. Inscription on the Shawnee County Courthouse. Soon after daylight, Chauncey crawled to the window. This was Americus now, his father said, and yet it still could have been Moonshine Church. The same brick red and stone brown, and the same weathered gray that logs took on when once they couldn't sprout forth leaves any more. A good many must have thought like Chauncey, for they went on calling it Moonshine Church. Most all at home did. Chauncey's father heard them a few days in disapproving silence. Then one noontime he laid down his knife and fork and looked around the table. It was a look like the Lion of Barbary gave. They had seen the lion on exhibition at the Central House. Admission a levy for grown-ups, and a fip for children. The man said that a hair cut from that lion and rubbed under the armpit would make weakly children strong, but Porteous wouldn't let Aunt Jenny try it on Chauncey. Our town council has voted to rename this town, Porteous said sternly. Of course, it must be ratified by the courts, but meantime, regardless of what you hear outside, I don't want to hear Moonshine Church in this house again. Oh, the younger ones in the Wheeler house had to watch their step after that, for none of them said Americus when their pappy wasn't around. It sounded too stiff and stuck up. Now Moonshine Church slipped out easy as an old tooth. The next day their father fetched home a handbill and hung it up where all could see. It had a drawing on it of 3 men at a fork in the road. They were pushing a wheelbarrow with a little courthouse in it. The 3 men, Chauncey's father said, were the county commissioners. One road fork led to a cruel monster with a whip. That was marked Major Tate. The other led to a spread eagle over an American flag. That was marked Americus. Notice that it doesn't say Moonshine Church, their father pointed out. Now how did that handbill stir up so much trouble? Chauncey wondered. A gang of men came down from Tateville, tearing down every one they saw pasted up on roadside fences and stables. That night Chauncey could hear them over in town yelling, "Hurrah for Tateville!" Then some Moonshine Church men came out of the taverns and yelled, "Hurrah for Americus!" The two sides had a fight, and the Moonshine Church men threw the Tateville men in the race. Most everybody in Moonshine Church found it easier to say Americus after that. Even Aunt Jenny, who never would put the name in her mouth, took to it now. Right here in Americus, she would say. Why, some folks, Chauncey's mother told, were so strong for it now, they felt cheated when Americus got only the county seat. They thought they'd get the Capitol at Washington and the White House besides. The night Americus celebrated the county seat, Chauncey lay in his bed a-listening. When he looked out of the window, he could see torches flickering in the dark. They were sure making high jack over getting the county court. Little did the small boy think how he would hate to see that new county court in session, that on it would hang his life and well-being. But that's what he found out a few days more. He was in the front room when his father was called downtown. "If Mr. Abernathy and a client come, tell him I'll be back soon," he told Chauncey. The little feller felt mighty proud. He sat up straight on his stool listening. When a knock sounded, he called, "Come in. Papa will be back soon." In walked Mr. Abernathy and an Indian, but Mr. Abernathy couldn't stay. "Tell your father I'll see him later," he said. "You can entertain Little Turtle till he gets back." Chauncey had no time to think about that. Before he could get up a word, Mr. Abernathy had gone, and all the little boy could see of him was his back through the window as he left. When Chauncey turned around on his stool, there was the Indian standing by the fire. He was big and gaunt, and his face the ugliest Chauncey ever saw. He wore a dirty shirt and breeches like a white man, but his footgear was moccasins. "Maybe my father won't be back today," Chauncey stammered. "Do you want to come back some other time?" The Indian's face stayed brown and hard and unwashed as a big copper penny. His arrogant eyes and fierce hooked nose showed not the slightest notice that he had heard. It gave the little feller a desperate feeling. Now how would you entertain a man that wouldn't listen, especially an Indian man? It would be easier to talk to a stump or stone. More than once Chauncey had talked to the big rock down by the run. It was a friendly rock, warm in the sun, and had no eyes to bore through you when you asked such a kindly thing as if Little Turtle was deaf and dumb. Every time he turned to see if his father was coming, those fierce eyes were like pitchy owls pining him to the stool. Seldom had his father looked so good as when that familiar figure turned in from the road. Just the way he walked, you could see he feared neither man nor devil. Powerful and noble as always, he came in the law room, went up and shook hands with his ragged caller, smiling at him like he was his brother. "How are you, Little Turtle?" his voice boomed. "Making everything all right. Glad to see you. Mr. Abernathy told me he didn't know if he could get you to come or not. Where is Mr. Abernathy?" The Indian didn't say anything. He just looked haughtily at Porteous. "Sit down," Chauncey's father said, and got a chair for him. He took his own easy chair, but the savage would not sit down. "Mr. Abernathy has told me very little about your case. Now I want you to tell me all you can." The Indian stood there silent. Only his eyes had life. They looked out black and rude, as if to say that he didn't talk such a low tongue as the white man's language. "Speak up, man. We can't do anything without speaking," Chauncey's father cried. "Me Injun," Little Turtle scorned. "Me talk Injun." Now what could his father do? Chauncey wondered, for he couldn't say much in Wyandot or Shawanee or whatever Little Turtle might be. He felt sorry for his father, but he hadn't need to, for his father didn't look sorry for himself. He kept sitting there, and the two men gazed, measuring each other. Then the white man got up and poured out 2 cups of rum from the jug. Little Turtle showed his first interest. He reached out a claw, and the rum went down like water. Seldom had Chauncey heard anybody smack his lips, as Little Turtle did, over the rum. His tongue ran around the inside of the cup like a dog's. "Damn Injun, me half white," he said, opening one eye wide for Porteous to look at. "See, blue eye." He held out the cup. "More lum." "We'll have one more, Little Turtle, that's all," Porteous said. He made the cups barely half full. The Indian took his and held it out. He looked at Porteous gravely. "White preacher say Injun no drink. Good man go up, much happy. Say Injun drink, bad man go down, much burn." He lifted the cup to his chin. "Maybe white preacher tell damn lie." He drank it down and set it on the desk table with alacrity. "You want me make mark on talking paper?" "No," Porteous said, sitting down and back in the calm, relaxed way he had when he was master of a situation. "Mr. Abernathy said that you used to be happy and prosperous. Now you look poor and wronged. I want you to tell me who wronged you. Perhaps I can help you." "Nobody help poor Injun," Little Turtle said. "Miss Co. up Tateville say help him, poor Injun. Say him, my brother, give me lum, give me whisk, give cow, give horse. Say make mark on talking paper, me make mark. Him constable, him take away horse, him take away house, take away land. Belong Miss Co. now, him say, talking paper say so. Take away pistol, white chief give. Now got nothing." "Does Miss Co. still call you brother?" Porteous inquired. "Still call brother? I say Miss Co. how brother? He say, we all brother. In Bible, go back to Adam. I say, glad him no closer." Chauncey's father laughed, but the boy thought he saw anger kindling in his eyes. "I take it you signed a note, a judgment note," he said. "We'll have to see about that. Me go see long ago. See down Maytown. See white constable. Him say Injun no good. Miss Co good. Miss Co keep horse. Miss Co keep house. Miss Co keep land. Miss Co keep pistol. All belong Miss Co now. Maytown isn't the county seat for us any more," Porteous explained kindly. "We have a new county up here, and the first court's being held here in Americus. I think I can help you." The Indian shook his head. "White man court no good. One time Injun get drunk, act bad like devil. What white man court do den? Ha! Tie all Injun up. Whip Injun plaintiff. Whip Injun defendant. Whip Injun witnesses. Porteous smiled. They won't do it here, not if I can help it. White man, all same together. Little Turtle held up a hand with 4 fingers, tight against each other. Great Spirit, make mistake. Take white man out, fire too soon. That's how come him white. Great Spirit, leave Injun in. Make him better. Bake him red. Miss Co say Injun come from across water. Come from Tartar. That why him red. I say, how you know, Tartar across water don't come from us, ha! Porteous laughed heartily. Little Turtle, gratified, went on. Long time ago, Injun have beaver. Take 'em to White Man town. White man say price. Say can't buy now, must wait. This Great Spirit Day. Must go church, be good, keep still, shut eye. Listen what Great Spirit say. Injun sit outside Great Spirit house. Wait, hear sing, hear talk. After while, white man come out. Can't pay, like him said. Price go down. Go to other white man, him say same. All trader say, one like other. Can't pay, price go down. Then Injun know, white man don't go church, so hear what Great Spirit say. Go so can put heads together. Think how cheat poor Injun. Well, I won't argue that with you. It's a good story, Porteous said, and Chauncey thought from his father's quiet smile that he had heard it before, but if you have any principle and courage left, you won't let Mr. Co defraud you and your wife and children out of what rightfully belongs to you. He said it with such force and fire that the Indian stood fascinated. You get talking paper back, get land back, get house back. I'm not certain, Porteous declared, but I can give you shyster friend. Mr. Co, the dressing down I've always wanted to in public. Whip 'em lash. No, not with the lash, Porteous regretted. However, I can promise to give the gentleman and his thieving practices a whipping with the tongue that will let him stand naked and bleeding a long time in the sight and memory of his fellow citizens. His words seemed to feed a hunger deep in the gaunt frame of the Indian. His eyes fastened on the white man, as if to search for any possible fraud to this promise. He stood motionless a long time. When he spoke it was with a kind of rude secret gratitude. What matter your boy, no run, no fish, no throw stone, sit all time. Chauncey felt his father's troubled gaze run over him. He's delicate, Little Turtle, doesn't eat enough. He's not strong, was born sickly. Keep him on stool all time, him stay sick all time. Him need run, give 'em Little Turtle make 'em run. Take 'em long march, make leg hard. No give anything to eat. 1 day, 2 day, 3 day, make belly hard. Make 'em sleep on ground, summer time, winter time. Make 'em sleep on snow, him get hard then, ha, like iron. Chauncey gazed quickly at his father, who offered his pouch of tobacco to the Indian, then filled his own pipe and lighted it. I'm sure that's fine for an Indian boy, he said equably, but I don't know how it would work out with a white boy. No hurt 'em, Little Turtle said quickly, but might die. Better die than sick all time. Better in ground than sit stool. Well, I'm grateful for your kind offer, Little Turtle, Porteous said, taking long quiet draughts on his pipe. We'll think about it. No need thank, Little Turtle promised. you go court. Whip, Miss Co, get 'em back house, get 'em back land. You my friend, me take boy, raise him Injun, make him strong like iron, make him heart hard like stone, won't die. But if die, go to Great Spirit. Great Spirit, make him over better next time. The Indian turned his head majestically and gave the boy a long look. It was a keen appraising and not unfriendly look, but Chauncey felt the blood in his heart thin and chill like snow water. He looked up and saw his mother standing at the door. A great passion rose in him to run to her, but the look on her face stopped him, a strong, bitter look. Could it be that she would give him to Little Turtle? He wouldn't put it past her. She had too many to feed and sew for and wash for as it was. Aunt Jenny always said, and more than once Huldah and Deesia had told him that he was the odd one, and made his mam more trouble than all the rest put together. The worst was that old, half-blind Jonathan Penny had to stump in their kitchen that night. "I ever tell ye how I was brung up by the Injuns?" he asked, in his high voice that gave Chauncey the feeling it had been split by an arrow. "They took me when I was just a little tyke, not much bigger'n Chauncey, and my brother Abel, about the size of Massey. We was prisoners and had to live with them and do what they said. Abel was good on his legs and tried to run home. One of the yaller blackguards caught him and run his spear through him. I was and asked him if he was hurt bad. He said he was. He couldn't walk where they wanted him to, so they finished him off. I was and hard to see it. Then they started whetting their knives, and I knowed I was next. I told them I didn't like it home. I said my mam was mean to me, and I was glad to get away from her. Oh, I hoped my mam would forgive me lying like that, for I reckoned the sun rise and set on her. But that stopped them a while. They asked me which way was home, and I told them the wrong way every time, so they put up their knives. I knew I was safe then for a while from losing my hair, but hardly could I stand it for longin' and pennin' for home. I was no bigger hardly than Chauncey, and nights when they couldn't see me, I cried like a baby. Oh, that's somethin' you got to go through to know about. Kept by the Injuns and sick for home. One time they took me along to the old Sciota salt works, and I seen a white woman I knowed back home. Her name was Miss McNally, and she was a prisoner like me. She looked at me, and I looked at her, but we hadn't dared to let on we knowed each other. The next day, I come on her in the woods, and she asked, was it really me, and how did the Injuns treat me, and didn't I want to get back to my mother and sisters. I told her I should be glad to, but never expected to see them again. Then she set me on a log and combed the lice out of my hair. Just doin' that made her cry, and she pulled out some pieces of dried scalp she kept in her clothes and showed 'em to me. She said they was her little girl's hair, just the trimmings the Injuns cut off the night after they killed her. She said she picked them up and intended to keep them as long as she lived. She sat there smoothin' out them pitiful pieces of her little girl's scalp on the log, a-strokin' 'em and cryin' and tellin' me this was all she had left of her family now. By that time we was both cryin' and holdin' on to each other. More'n once after that we had a good cry together at the salt works. When the Injuns I was with left, I give her good-bye, and never did I see or hear of her again." Chauncey couldn't hear any more. He looked at his mother. Her face was twisted up, as cruel as he ever saw it. He felt he couldn't expect any pity there. Desperately he made his way to the front room, and then to the loft, where he could be alone. Gloom so steeped him that he never noticed how his heart kept shaking his small frame like a hammer. All the tales of Indian capture and torture he ever heard came out now from the dark recesses of his mind. Most of all, he couldn't forget the story and fate of Nilam. Without hope, he threw himself face downward on his bed. Shawnee County's first Court of Common Pleas was held on a Tuesday morning in early fall, and Porteous couldn't help observing the look that Chauncey gave him when he left. He told Resolve it was a look a dog might give you when you took it out to shoot it. What could have got over the boy? Porteous asked, especially on such a momentous occasion. You couldn't ask for a more auspicious day for bringing the refining boon of the courts to this fast-growing backwoods town. The sun was out, the air bracing. The county in its entirety seemed to have come abroad for the great event. Long before father and son crossed the footbridge over the race, they could see Water Street filled with horses and men. A sense of gratification, as the original author of this improvement to the people came over Porteous, and he greeted expansively all he met, stopping here and there with dignity to exchange a few words, to introduce his son, to hearken a grave ear to troubles, and pass them off with some humorous story. He and Resolve hadn't proceeded halfway down Water Street when the bell rang, and they could hear the voice of new Sheriff Collier. "O ye, court's about to set." Back on the bench outside the cabin, Chauncey heard the bell, too, and it went through him like a clock's stroke to a doomed man. He knew it came from the central house, where court was to set. The central house was the largest in Americus, and more than once had he seen its sign swinging on Water Street, and showing the British frigate Guerre being whipped by the Constitution. The inn had a wing on Buttonwood Street, with a bell and small belfry on the roof, and every day from the cabin you could hear it ring. Guests rang it when they wanted the hostler to come and take their horses. The cook rang it at mealtime, usually twice. The first time, his father said, was a warning to wash up and be ready, and the second time told that hot dishes were being set on the table. On all such occasions, it would ring short and furiously, but now, for the holding of court, it rang in slow majesty, as if tolling for somebody's death. At the sound of it, Chauncey shuddered and pulled the sides of the quilt over his ears. At noon, peering from the loft window, the little feller watched his father with Resolve and Little Turtle come up the lane for dinner. Chauncey would rather have died than gone down. He told Massey he was sick. He couldn't touch anything on the table. His mother came up to take a look at him, but he must have looked bad as he felt, because she told him he better stay in bed. Not till he saw his father and Little Turtle and Resolve going back to town did he feel relief, and that was far too short. As the afternoon waned, so did his well-being. Any minute now, he knew, the case might be over, and Little Turtle come for him. When on toward supper, he saw Resolve returning home. He was too frightened to go down and too anxious to stay up. When he came to the kitchen door, Resolve was telling his mother and the girls about it. "Oh, it came up," Resolve said. "First were some applications for store and tavern licenses. Then they granted letters of administration to Miss Luckenbach, that widow from Tateville. Then Little Turtle's case was called. They drew lots out of Judge Maidenford's hat to impanel the jury, and Papa got up to present his case. Just as he got started, Judge Brown got up and went out. I don't know if he's a friend of Mr. Coe, or if he just wanted to mortify Papa after what Papa did to him at the hay scales. Anyhow, he stayed out and stayed out. They couldn't have a quorum without him, and Papa had to wait till he got back. You know Judge Brown likes to ride into town on that white horse of his, and he came today with his saddlebags bulging with law books. He brought those saddlebags into court to show everybody he knew the law, and laid them on the floor under the poplar table we call the bar. Now when he stayed out so long, Papa got mad. He dragged out those saddlebags and set them up on the bench in Judge Brown's seat. He said that if Judge Brown didn't come in, they'd have to go on without him. He said the saddlebags knew more about law than Judge Brown did anyhow. Then Papa started his talk, but mostly he'd address the saddlebags. "Your Honor this," he'd say to those old leather bags, and "Your Honor that." The people began to laugh. The jury had to laugh. Even the other judges couldn't keep their faces straight. When Judge Brown did come in at last, he was so mad he threw out the case. Chauncey was trembling with excitement, so he could hardly talk. "What does throwing out the case mean?" "It means like when you throw something out of the window. Papa has to take it to a higher court now, and that will take months." All the girls had laughed at the picture Resolve made of Papa arguing his case to Judge Brown's saddlebags. Now, after the girls had quieted down, Chauncey suddenly began to shriek and laugh. "Wasn't that funny, Papa talking to the saddlebags?" he cried. Resolve looked pleased and a little surprised, for it was something of a feat to make sad little Chauncey laugh. "Something else happened that struck us funny," he said. "That back room of the central house was so packed that the lawyers and judges could hardly get in. When Papa and I got there, men were standing on the window sills and hanging on the wall and rafters like Madagascar bats. First thing Judge Brown did was get up and order the sheriff to remove them. And the sheriff went around pulling down by the leg anybody who wouldn't get down himself. Well, a big farmer named Junkins from Spring Valley wouldn't come down. He kicked at the sheriff. He said, 'I pay my taxes, and I got as good right here as any man.' 'Come on down,' Judge Brown ordered him. 'You're creating a disturbance.' 'Oh, hush up, Judge,' Jenkins said. 'You're making a sight more disturbance than I am. You come down,' and the judge told him, 'or I'll send you to jail.' 'There ain't no jail, and you know it,' Jenkins said. 'There is at Maytown,' the judge said. 'Sheriff, arrest that man.' 'Let him come,' Jenkins said. 'I'll stand a hitch with him like I did the damn thief that stole my hogs. I broke his arm and his ribs and half broke his neck.' 'Stop,' the judge said. 'You're incriminating yourself. You have no right to take the law in your own hands.' "Why, Judge," Junkin said, "I'd 'a' licked you too if you'd 'a' come and stole my hogs." At every fresh sally from Junkins, the girls laughed, and Chauncey with them, louder and more uproarious than they. Resolve looked still more pleased. Never had he had a more appreciative audience. Now, what had come over the little feller? He wondered. This morning, when he and his father left, Chauncey had looked like it was his last day on earth. This noon he felt so bad he couldn't even come downstairs and touch dinner. And now he looked good and healthy as anybody, laughing and jumping and shouting his merriment louder than the rest. He sure was a singular young one, and it took a smarter mind than his to make him out. Chapter 7. Yon Thorn Hedge. Christmas comes but once a year, but when it comes, I'll have my share. Huldah Wheeler. The world had changed, Sayward agreed, getting up this morning. Only yesterday she was thinking how time in the old days used to stand still. Late afternoons she could specially feel it, when the sunlight lay in the cleared ground and banked against the wall of woods. Nothing moved, save flies droning. It seemed then that a dead calm hung over cabin and clearing, like a spell had been laid. Early mornings, when it was still dark, you could feel the hush, too, as if some time during the night the world had broken its spring and run down. All had stopped, and as far as you knew, you were the only person left alive. That wasn't such a far while ago, either. But today, long before daylight, anybody who wasn't deaf could tell that the world still moved, and that plenty were alive to push it. Lying in bed, you could hear town folks getting up to go to market, and country folks fetching their stuff to town. Many of them came a long ways. They had to leave home about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and them that lived far off had to get up around midnight. They liked to be the first to spread their turnips and horseradish out in the market shed on the square, or if they sold their flour and bacon down the river, they liked to be the first in line to unload. Americus was getting a name for herself. This was the place to ship from. Sometimes it had as many as 18 keel boats and barges tied up here in one day. Oh, times had changed since her pappy had cut down the first big butts around here. Things moved mighty fast. Only a short while back it seemed like she had a cabin full of babies. She could wake up at any time of night and know where they were all at. If one barked with the croup, she could lay her hands right on it. Now they were mostly grown or nigh onto it. Kinsey was going to government school back in Maryland, and today Resolve was getting married. This morning he would go out of her and Porteus's house, and most likely never sleep under their roof again. He and Fay had their own house about half up. Till it was done, he could stay with his bride in her father's house on the square, a house different from his folks' cabin as daylight from dark. When General Morrison first came to Moonshine Church, he lived in the Fitch place on Water Street. Last year he put up his own mansion house. It had blue shutters and a white doorway with side window lights, wood carving and stone steps, smooth and even as sawn timbers. You went first in a long room that had no use save to walk through. It ran the whole length of the house, and they called it the hall. Upstairs was the same. Those two halls would have made 4 good rooms, Sayward thought, although she didn't know what use the Morrisons would have for more, since already they had 4 rooms downstairs and 9 upstairs, counting the little sew room on the 2nd floor, and them on the 3rd floor that the hired girls slept in. Not even Major Tate or Colonel Supfin owned so fine a place. Country folk always stared at it as they went by, and boatmen who used to brag up the French brick houses in New Orleans now bragged General Morrison's mansion house from Tateville to Memphis. Sayward had been inside a good many times, but never had she seen it so lively and aflutter as today. Folks had come by stage, boat, and their own carriages. Most were decked out in the new styles. It did her heart good to see how at home Porteous felt in a big house, and how easy he was with fine company. Not once had he ever breathed to her what kind of home he had been raised in back there in the Bay State, but you could tell it must have been of the gentry. The natural way he bowed and carried himself in here, and Deesia just like him. Now her own sister Jenny held back as if struck all of a heap to think she would soon be kin to the Morrisons. Sayward sat herself down, quiet and steady-headed, taking things as they came. Just the same, when the wedding started, it set her heart to swelling. She felt grateful resolve had picked out such a sensible town body. Fay could have a ring on every finger, save 1, and 3 on that, if she wanted. She would come into plenty some day. And yet, more than once, she had asked Sayward how would she do this or that if she was her. Sayward took care not to let her tongue run. Even her own girls, when they married, would have to get along as best they could without trotting to their ma'am. A bride did better standing on her own feet. Till it was over, she thought this wedding of resolves the nicest she ever saw, and mighty different from the time she and Porteous were made one. This was no squire's dry and hasty tying of a knot just to be lawful, but marriage in the name and spirit of the Lord, and done by his bishop, who traveled over 200 miles just to say the words. Although Americus had 2 or 3 preachers and circuit riders of its own now, a lady from Maytown sat at the black piano to play a march, and Leah sang beautiful. Everything was solemn as it should be, but you never heard such a lively carrying on afterward. Plenty food and drink were passed. Sociability and good feelings flowed. Everybody talked so nice to Sayward. Her new daughter came up right off for a hug and a kiss, and after that kept fetching up her friends and relations to meet her mother-in-law. Folks from as far as the Western Reserve told her what a fine boy she had. By the time she and Porteous went home, she felt like she had used up all her credit with the Lord. When things stayed bad with her or her family too long, she always felt she had saved up some blessing that the Lord owed her. But when Providence had given her a long stretch of favors, she told herself she better not think this was the way it was going to be from now on. No, she owed the Lord something, and she better fetch her feet down to solid ground before he did it for her. Not till the second night after Resolve's wedding did she recollect about her account with the Lord. That was when Huldah never showed up at supper or bedtime. First thing in the morning she sent Sooth down to Amy McMahon's to see if Huldah had stayed all night, but Amy claimed she hadn't seen her since she saw her on her way to Resolve's wedding. Jenny, when she heard it, came running over. If Huldah hadn't come overnight, it must be she was in the river, or if not, in the race, Jenny said. She set all the boatmen looking for Huldah's long black hair, a-floating on the water in some deep eddy where the cheesy brown foam went round and round, or for her head a-laying on some rocky pillow, soft with the flotsam of sticks and leaves that tried to ride the river to Orleans without paying freight. Or maybe, Jenny said, some river Frenchman had stole her in the cabin of his boat and pulled off with her upstream, but most likely he had gone down, running with the current by the forks and Maytown, never tying up on shore where decent folk could hear a young girl's call for help, but on and on he'd go with his ill-gotten gains till safe among his own countrymen on the muddy bayous that flowed slow and brown as molasses into the Mississippi, and thence to the salt sea. Sayward heard her through. Oh, hardly a word Sayward said to tempt Providence, but deep inside she felt Huldah had never fallen in the river. She was too sure-footed. She could tread a foot log over the race like a cat, and hardly likely had a Frenchman penned her in his cabin, for Huldah would be a match for any eat-frog feller. Oh, nothing did Sayward say out loud that the Almighty could make her rue, but over and over to herself she stuck to it that Huldah was not in or down the river. No, Huldah hated water too much, even the little in the wash-basin. For all her handsome looks and ways, seldom would she wash her neck till her man made her. Then how much more would she shy away from a whole river? Sayward just felt glad she didn't have Porteous home on her hands that day. He had to tend to business that wouldn't wait. His voice, when he came back, sounded deep as usual, but you could see his hands couldn't find the law book he wanted. If only Resolve, her staff and mainstay, wasn't easy with Fay to some Morrison kin, but she mustn't begrudge them their wedding trip. Wardon wanted to go down the river on one of John Quitman's boats a-looking for Huldah, alive or drowned, but his mother told him to stay at the sawmill, so she would know where he was at if she needed him. All that day and the next, the girls and others kept running in with wild tales of some dead body found in the English lakes, or over some hill or holler. It didn't matter if it was last week. Maybe it was Huldah. Now little Chauncey was small good, save to sit on his stool and watch her with those sad eyes of his. Deesia was her rock, staying close to the kitchen, going about her work like every day, talking matter of fact, cabin talk of cooking and sewing, of this or that. Oh, if folks who wanted to help only knew what comfort it was to hear small talk at a time like this, to go on and forget your trouble as much as you could, to act like all was common as usual. It held off the burden for a while, and left you a little more grit to stand bad things when they came. It hadn't gone long in the afternoon when Leah and her ma'am called. Was there news of Huldah, or anything they could do? Hardly were they settled in the front room when Sayward saw a stranger making for the door. She didn't know as she ever saw him before. Must be some Salt Creeker or Sassafrasser, as Porteous called them, from back in the hills. He wanted to know, did the squire live here, and was he home? No, he was down in town, Sayward told him. Then something made her say more. Is it about our girl that's missing? I don't know right yet, ma'am. He backed off. Not till I talk to your man. Quickly Sayward stepped out and faced him before he could get away. You can tell me, is she all right? Oh, she's all right if it's her, he said, but so uneasy that the lightness in her lasted only for a lick. Then where is she? Why isn't she here? She's out in the Orbank Valley. The Orbank Valley? What's she a-doing way out there? The man looked mighty sober. I can't tell you, ma'am. I only burn charcoal out Accordin' to what I heard, she come to the Holcomb Furnace house night before last. She give another name than Wheeler. I had no idea who it was till I come to town this mornin', and heard you and the squire had a young miss that never come home. Now, this might not be her at all. She claimed she come from the Bay State. What did she look like? Well, she's handsome, they said, fair-complected, with black hair and eye-winkers. That's her, Sayward heard Sooth and Libby say behind her. What was she dressed in? Deesia wanted to know. Now, why did the charcoal burner have to scourge around and not say anything? What did she have on? Sayward put to him sharply. From what I heard, she hadn't much on, ma'am, he said, sober. She had to holler from the bushes. Now I don't know if it's true. I didn't see her, but that's what they tell me. She claimed gypsies took her clothes and left her that way. Behind her, Sayward heard Sooth and Libby draw in their breaths. She looked around. Yes, either she or the girls had left the door stand open. The Morrisons, sitting in their chairs, and there could hear every word. Well, it was done now, and no use crying over. Whose place was this, you said she came to? She asked sternly. The Holcomb Furnace house, ma'am, the charcoal burner said. She recollected now how a George Holcomb had set up a furnace on Orbank Creek, far back in the hills. This was on the other side of the river, near where they found iron. He was hardly 30, if she minded him right, a single man whose folks, they said, had forges back in Pennsylvania. He had come to see Porteous on law business, and cut a figure with his rough red hair and fine red sorrel mare. He had ridden up to their door and tied the mare to Porteous's hitching post. Huldah could have seen him then if she wanted, and most likely did, for there was, blessed little those handsome black eyes of hers missed. Libby and Sooth were whispering to their mother. Did she reckon this true? Oh, Sayward couldn't have told them one way or the other, for she didn't know herself yet. All she knew was how like their Aunt Asha it sounded, her own sister. Asha, who had run off to the English lakes with a man that belonged to Jenny. That was a long time ago, and where Asha was now, or if she still lived and cut up her didos, only God knew. Not a word had they had from her since she went, and few tales about her. You would think that would be an end to it, but no. The Lord had said unto the third and fourth generation, and here was Huldah. Always had Sayward noticed how Huldah minded her of Asha, not so coarse or rough-spoken, but the same black monsey hair and wild Indian ways. But hardly had she reckoned Huldah so bold as to do a fool trick like this, stuff her dress in a log some place, and go naked to the man she had her eye on, figuring that was the way to win him for a husband. This story would be all over town till nightfall, Sayward told herself, if not already there. It wasn't likely the charcoal burner had held his tongue in town. Yes, she could see Jenny now cutting the square, but she hated it most on account of Resolve's new mother-in-law and his bride's sister. That's the usual way it worked out. The ones you'd like to keep it from the longest had to hear it the first. As for herself, she didn't know what would come out of this, but she had overed it the time Asha ran off with Jenny's man. She reckoned she would over it now. The Lord had put her feet back on the ground like she expected, and she oughtn't to complain if the ground was hard and none too clean. Miss Morrison had stood up to go when Sayward came back in the house. "Don't you want me to send the General?" she asked. He could drive out and get hold of before Mr. Wheeler came home. "Thanky," Sayward said humbly, "but this is something I got to do my own self." It was good, she thought, that Porteous wasn't off in Tateville, or she'd have no horse. She had Libby and Sooth hitch up Hector in the covered two-wheeler. No, she couldn't take either one along, not even Jenny. She would need room to pick up some farmer's boy or Woodsy to show her the way. She fetched out a dress and shoes and stockings for Huldah, just in case. Then, with a small flask of brandy under her seat, she sat very straight in the two-wheeler and started for the river. The ferry was just in, with a team driving off, when she got there. Hector and she were the first on the wide, splintery old scow. Before old Mike, the ferryman, could cast off, he was called up to the ferry house, and she thought he would never get back. Now, what would they keep her waiting so long for? Could it be true what she heard, that King Sam blamed Porteous, among others, for holding court at the Central instead of the ferry house? And would he now try to take it out on any wheeler he could? Couldn't help it, Ms. Wheeler, old Mike apologized as he pushed past the two-wheeler. The pole fitted to his shoulder. Sayward didn't say anything. She had trouble enough of her own this day without letting King Sam set her teeth on edge. She would make up the time once she reached the other side, for Hector was a good traveler, better in the gig than brig. He could trot smart where the road lay smooth, was a faster walker uphill and down. It was something to see him step briskly along, his head nodding. It took a good man on foot to keep up with him. Never, on the steepest hills, did he like to rest. Once started, he was out to get where he was going and back home again. You had to watch out only when some high-lifted rider tried to pass him on the road, for Hector wouldn't let any other horse around him. George Holcomb was such a rider, Sayward heard, even when no drink was in him, running his horse like crazy and spattering himself with mud. Now wasn't it strange that both Huldah and Asha had took to a man like that? She only hoped for Huldah's sake that George Holcomb would turn out better than Louis Scurra. Well, she would soon find out. It surprised her how many folks it had living over here to tell her which way to the furnace. Why, farms were plenty as blackberries on this side of the river. The woods for a ways had melted away like last year's snow. Black stumps sprinkled the fields of clover and grain. Twice she passed country mills with their muley saws a-riding up and down. She could tell now her own self which way to go. All she had to do was follow the creek, they said, for this was the water that ran the cold blast in the Holcomb furnace. She was getting in the woods now. The only clearings she saw were charcoal pits. So Huldah reckoned she'd be safe to do as she pleased way back here, and nobody in town would know the difference. She found the furnace in a wild glen, laid of brown native stone, with a stone bridge running to the side hill, and down below a big stone cabin. That was the furnace house, no doubt, and behind it the brush where Huldah must have stood, naked and brazen, calling that gypsies had taken her clothes. Sight of that brush and cabin fetched Sayward up straight and watchful. Oh, this was no sociable visit she was making, but she would not let her mouth get bitter, like it wanted to. Putting on a good face, she knocked on the door. Whoever was in there must have heard her, and Hector coming. Hardly a man or woman in the country that didn't run to the door or window, if they had any, to see a traveler go by, let alone stop. But nobody answered here. She had to rap louder and try the latch. Then somebody came to the door in a bright red check dress Sayward had never seen before, with a bowl of batter in her hand, like she was a lawfully married housewife making her man's supper. She gave no start to see her mother, and that showed she had peeked out of the window when she heard wheels. Only her eyes had a strange look that said, "Now how did you know where I was?" but never did Huldah speak it. "Can I come in?" Oh, Sayward knew she was welcome as a pig in a turnip patch, so she didn't wait for a bid. She just stepped across the door log. So this, she told herself, was where Huldah came with nary a stitch on to cover her nakedness. That was 2 evenings back. Now where in here could a young woman like her have laid herself down in the night time? It had no loft, only rafters with a few loose plank for extra stuff and fixin's. If George Holcomb had more than one bed, she couldn't see it. Just this good walnut bed standing in the corner with a blanket, scarlet as sin, laying on top. A man's things were bunched around. His clothes hung from wall pins. His boots stood on the floor, and his account book and pipe lay on the high desk in the corner, like he just set them there. But the man himself was no place around that she could see. Rather would she have stayed clear of thrashing this thing out with Huldah, but sometimes you couldn't go on your rathers. "You been living here all this time, Huldah?" "I've been here since the gypsies brought me." Sayward let that fiddle-faddle about the gypsies pass. She had no heart for this business. Even on the way in here, she wouldn't admit to herself that this thing could be true. Why, Huldah looked no more than a child now, with her short skirt and red plaid hair ribbon. Anybody else in this house with you? Just him and me. You been living with him, Huldah. Where'd you expect me to go? Huldah jeered so it sounded like Asha. It was night time when I got here. Well, I've come to take you home, Sayward said shortly. I'm not in your house now, Huldah flared at her. You can't tell me what to do. Oh, yes, I can, Miss Huldah, her mother said grimly. What's more, I can pick you up and carry you out to the rig if I have to. You're coming home with me, and he's a-goin' to ride his horse along. The first concern showed in her face. Who's going to? What do you want him for? What do you suppose? The least he can do for you now is stand up with you in wedlock. Not him. I wouldn't marry him if he was the last man. Sayward considered. Well, she could let that go and see what came out of this. There was no use making more trouble than you had to. She also better let Huldah's other dress go till she got her home, and got it out of her where she had hid it. Then Guerdon could come over some time and try to find it. Now Sayward unfolded the plum-colored dress she had brought along. You can put this on to come home in. That red check, I take it, don't belong to you. Don't you say anything against my dress, Huldah threatened. I cut it out and sewed it myself from some goods he rode out and fetched me. I think you did a real nice job, Huldah, Sayward told her kindly. But toward her ma'am, Huldah stayed sullen as a young spider. She was bound to keep that red check dress, whether George Holcomb bought the goods for it or no. She had made it herself, hadn't she? Besides, he said it was hers. She would come along home with her mother if she had to, but she wouldn't take this dress off, nor would she say much once they got in the rig. After a try or two, Sayward didn't push her. She hadn't looked for Huldah to thank her for coming and fetching her home. As they went, she saw two men watching them from the furnace bridge. But if one was George Holcomb, he never came down to his house to see what this woman with a horse and two-wheeler wanted with the girl. He must have half mistrusted all the time that Huldah wasn't all she made out to be. When they came to the river, the ferry lay on yonder side. It was supper time, and still as could be. You could hear the bell ring plain when Huldah got down and yanked on the wire. Somebody came out of the back of the ferry house to see who was this in a hurry to get across. But the ferry stayed lying there like a dead thing on the town bank till teams and folks afoot piled up on both sides waiting to cross. When the ferry did come at last, Sayward saw that King Sam himself was on it. Now what did this spell out, she wondered, for the place he liked to be was behind the bar of his ferry house. Only to usher some celebrated body across on his old scow would he come down to help, for he claimed to be a celebrated body himself, and that's how he got his name, for kicking a king out of his tavern once when Louis Philippe of France was over here in Ohio and complained his accommodations not good enough for one of sovereign blood. No sooner had the ferry landed till King Sam was out on shore like a marshal, holding up his arm and ordering passengers to come or halt. When all were off, Sayward would have driven on, for she had been first to the water, but he held her back, and waved others on till the scow was full. "I got no room now," he called, and then what sounded like, "You and that young slut'll have to wait." Sayward sat there swallowing back her dander. Why, lucky he hadn't come any closer to say that, or she might forget herself and answer with her horsewhip. Nobody could say a thing like that to her face, about her own, even if it were true. Oh, she could see that his small brain had schemed this all out, and it had worked like clockwork. Now she and Huldah could sit over here in their disgrace, he thought, and wait till he felt like coming back for them. Well, maybe they could, and maybe they couldn't. More than one person she had seen fording the river to save ferry toll, especially in the late summer and early fall, when the water was low. It was good and high now, but she recollected one time she and Jenny had gone to visit Todd Wilder's woman. This was long ago. The river was high then too, and Todd had come over with his spotted ox, and ferried them across on its back, one at a time. Surely she reckoned Hector ought to be good in the water as Todd Wilder's spotted ox. When King Sam saw her drive in the river, he must have wondered had he done right after all, for he called back from his end of the scow, "Go on back, Miss Wheeler. I'm coming back for you directly." But seldom had Sayward turned back in her life, and hardly would she now. She pulled Huldah's hand from where she was thumbing her nose at the ferry. All the time Hector was settling in farther and farther in the river. It got no deeper for a long ways than his belly. Then all at once the river started squirting through the cracks and joints of the gig box. "You can put your feet up under you on the seat," Sayward told Huldah. As for her own, she'd keep them down on the floor, where she'd need them to hold Hector's head up once he went. Down in some deep hole, and had to swim for it. The two-wheeler heaved up over unseen rocks and sunken logs. Deep water lifted first one wheel, then the other, and for a while the rig floated like a snug little black and red boat on the river. Hector was in now well over his shoulders, and once or twice the brown water floated over the sway of his browner back. But it turned out that his feet found bottom all the way, not that he couldn't have swam for it if he had to, Sayward reckoned, when they reared, dripping out of the water on the far side, and Sayward had a chance to look up. It seemed like half of Water Street was up on the bank a-watching, General Morrison among them. He came out in the road, holding up his cane respectfully. "Are you and Huldah all right, ma'am?" he inquired. "We're fine, thank ye, General," Sayward said, matching his dignity with her own, but in her breast it felt warm and good to have ken that stood by you in front of everybody, at a time like this, even if they were only kin by marriage. Once she had time to think on dry land. She reckoned she had been a little hasty, fording the river. She might have drowned, Huldah, and some folks would say she could have done it on purpose. What's more, had she waited till King Sam got good and ready to fetch her, it might have been too dark for half the town to see her fetch Huldah home. Now every tongue would wag in Americus now. For a long time to come they would joke about Huldah's gypsies, but Huldah didn't let on she minded. She sat up beside her ma'am as big as you please, and when she got home she acted the same way among her sisters. Oh, she was somebody more than they were now, somebody older and wiser, and when they spoke to her it was almost like they should call her Miss Huldah or Miss Holcomb. They didn't know rightly which. Sayward said nothing to Porteous till she and he were in their bed that night, and all the girls in the other loft out of hearing. Then they had a grave talk. Oh, she knew, and he knew, that fetching Huldah home didn't mean all was now in apple pie order. You couldn't send a woman to a man's cabin without a stitch of clothes on, and then take her off 2 nights later like nothing had happened. But Porteous, who always knew just what to do for his client, was confounded when it came to his daughter. In the end, Sayward had to fall back on herself. Always in the past, she told herself, if worst came to worst, she would just have to live it down. But something like this could take a mighty long while to live down, and she wasn't young as she used to be. She could only pray the Lord to give her a long life, till she could square herself and her family with the world. The one small satisfaction she had as she went to sleep was the way Huldah had looked up to her and listened when they got home. It was fording the river, Sayward thought, and not knuckling down to King Sam that did it. Huldah didn't know that her old mammy had it in her.